Thank you. I'm really happy to be here with all of you. It's great to get this bird's eye view of the Zendo and to see all the chaplains. And I can't see those of you that are on YouTube. The tenor of our time is conflict. There's the raging conflict in Gaza and Israel. There are incredibly conflictual divisions within our own society, within our political system, and as chaplains, as humans, it's incumbent on us to try to do the work of healing. And we need to have some tools and skills. That's what the chaplains are learning here, and they have a variety of tool sets that the chaplains have already been exploring new ones this week. And then there's also the tried and true practices of the Buddha Dharma and I'm going to share one of them with you today. I want to talk about a teaching of Eihei Dogen. It's in Japanese. It's called Bodhisattva Shishobo, and there are a number of different translations. Kaz Tanahashi translates that as the Bodhisattva's Four Methods of Guidance. A translation that I did with Shohaku Okamura is the Bodhisattva's Four Embracing Dharmas. And I'm going to go into that, but I want to give you some background. And first I should say, I posted in the chat, which people on Zoom can see, a letter and a link to a petition that I've been circulating actually no more than a day. It was a letter that was written by Bhikkhu Bodhi and myself, and we've been circulating it to Buddhist communities in petitioning President Biden to call upon his counterparts in Israel and in Gaza to enact a ceasefire and allow for humanitarian aid to get through. And if you can read it, you have to download. You should open the link, and if you're in alignment with it, I encourage you to sign it. And it's a first step. It's a way that we can be together and take a first step, even though the action of a petition may not have a lot of substance or influence. But how it influences us is what's significant. So I invite you to look at that. And I will say, somebody called me Ayo Yatunde, who some of you may know, and Roshi knows very well, called me this afternoon and said, well, what do we do next? And one of the things that we came up with is to recognize that the Senate and the House of Representatives, each of them, they have a chaplain. And one of them, the Senate chaplain, has really been very clear in expressing his deep concern about the violence in this country, about the proliferation of weapons, and he's spoken out on that. So what we were talking about was initiating a dialogue with the chaplain. And I just wanted to say that because I think it's relevant for all of us as chaplains. We are stepping into a position where we can mediate, where we can bring a voice of spirituality and sanity to circumstances that seem quite crazy. So this brings us to this fascicle of Dogen's. And so Dogen, he returned from China in 1227 and created a monastery in the southern reaches of Kyoto called Koshoji. And, it was a beautiful place. Beautiful, I think, like the Zendo that we have at Upaya, a place for practice and a place where he could teach and where people could develop a strong monastic community. But the social climate in this Kamakura era Japan was wild. And you had conflicts among the various Buddhist schools, even as one of the things that was happening at that time was the rising of these popular forms of Buddhism. So Dogen Zen was a popular form. What we now have as Shin Buddhism, Jodo Shinshu, and Nichiren, all of those were popular forms of Buddhism that arose in response or in reaction to the kind of aristocratic and the royal hegemony of formal Buddhism in that place, which was marked by feudalism and political tensions and civil strife. Even at that time, there were warrior monks, who went out in their robes to do battle with each other. So in 1243, after Koshoji had been established for more than 10 years, in the midst of this kind of internecine violence, Dogen wrote Bodhisattva Shishobo. You can find it in Shobogenzo. You can find it in Moon and the Dewdrop. Some of you have that book. If you don't, you should have it. And he presented this fascicle, which is very practical, to his community as guidance for their response to really difficult situations. They were literally under attack. And by this point in 1243, in the spring of 1243, they were about to take a very radical step, which was to pack up their entire monastery, close the doors, and move to the wilds of Echizen province. Try to imagine what it'd be like. What if all of you, say, who are practicing at Upaya, were facing, you were being attacked by another Buddhist group in Santa Fe, and you decided that for the sake of safety and for the sake of practice, you had to pack up your whole monastery and move up to Roshi's retreat, move up the mountain into the mountains to her retreat. It's something like that. So I can only try to imagine what a wrenching experience, what a wrenching departure that was for them. And I think today, as kind of war and violence burn through Israel and Gaza, how intergenerational trauma and conflict and power are burning through those communities. So there's got to be an alternative, a nonviolent alternative to hatred and destruction. So Shishobo presents 4 direct methods of social interaction, 4 ways that we can embrace each other. And those are giving or dana, loving speech or kind speech, beneficial action, and what the 4th is what translates in some places as identity action, which I think is a bit obscure. In a new translation of Shobogenzo, which has just come out from the Soto Translation Project, they translate this word as cooperation, which is, that works for me. So, giving, kind speech, beneficial action, and cooperation. And these are 4, this is not a system that was created by Dogen. It's something that you can find, first of all, in the early Pali Suttas, a very brief sutra called the Sangaha Sutta, and Sangaha, and it's the same thing. The 4, it's sometimes translated as the foundations of social unity. And then you find it popping up in all kinds of Mahayana sutras. So, just to say, this is kind of the signal impetus for a book that I wrote about 10 or 12 years ago called The Bodhisattva's Embrace. And there's a longer essay on this fascicle, and also the translation that I did with Shohaka Okamura is in that book. And one thing I write in the beginning is to embrace is to encircle. I put my arms around you, and you put your arms around me. And this is how we turn towards each other and show our love and connection. To embrace is to unify, to make one of 2. In a moment of embrace, the limits of our body, our skin, our thoughts are not so clear. We can't quite distinguish ourselves from those whom we are embracing. When you look from above, when you take a Buddha eye view of 2 people embracing, you see one entity. So each of these 4 dharmas or 4 methods is really a practice. And this is what Dogen was suggesting to his community was, okay, how are we going to practice with this moment that in such a way that doesn't leave us in direct conflict with our Dharma sisters and brothers, and doesn't leave us in conflict with ourselves. So these practices are pointing towards compassion and embrace. Or more accurately, what is the practice that helps us express our understanding that we are not separate from each other? This is really difficult in a world where everywhere you look, there are wedges being driven between people on the basis of belief systems, on the basis of wealth, on the basis of privilege, on the basis of weaponry, all of that. And it seems to drive against the reality that we are one. So in the act of embrace, momentarily, we can drop the distinction between self and other. But to embrace is not simply merging. It's not some mushy and meaningless oneness. Because there's always a time when we don't live in embrace. There's a time when the embrace is over. There's a time when the dance ends. And we return to our individuality, but something has changed. We've allowed for something to shift within us. And so I want to look at least look at the first embracing Dharma, giving, because this is where this is what flows through all of them. So giving, giving is, this is dana paramita. It's the first of the paramitas, or the first of the perfections as well. And we give our attention, we give our friendship, we give community, we give material aid, and ultimately, it's spiritual teaching, and ultimately we give fearlessness. And first of all, we have to give that to ourselves. So in formal sense, in the liturgical sense, we offer our voices, we offer incense, we offer flowers, light, tea, and food. And these gifts circulate without anyone holding on to them. So Dogen writes, this is just a beautiful passage, giving or offering means not being greedy. Not to be greedy means not to covet. So he does an interesting move here, which I think speaks really to the circumstances of his community. Not to be greedy means not to covet. Not to covet commonly means not to flatter, not to curry favor. Even if we rule the 4 continents, in order to offer the teachings of the true way, we must simply and unfailingly not be greedy. And this is what is really beautiful. It's like offering treasures we are about to discard to those we do not know. For me, this is like we put things out on the sidewalk here that we don't need anymore in our homes, and someone always picks them up. They're useful to someone. Treasures that we are about to discard to those we do not know. We give flowers blooming on the distant mountains to the Tathagata. Now, this has a really different meaning to us now than it did in Dogen's time. In Dogen's time, nobody was systematically logging the forests or strip mining the hills or denuding them of life. But now we really have to think about that, because if we continue business as usual, we are not going to give flowers blooming on the hillside. The hillsides will be gone. The hillsides will be just turn into toxic runoff. So this is a strong, I think, environmental message. We give flowers blooming on the distant mountains to the Tathagata and offer treasures accumulated in past lives to living beings. So all that we have become, no matter how you think of it, everything that we have inherited through our family history, through our genetics, through our Dharma ancestors, is all brought forward in us. And our responsibility is to give it away. So whether our gifts are Dharma or material objects, each gift is truly endowed with the virtue of offering. So giving begins with the recognition that there is nothing but giving in the whole universe. The universe and all beings are continuously giving. And this is true. This is our true spiritual understanding, but the responsibility we have is that each of us has to do our part. We can understand this, but if you studied another fascicle of Dogen, Genjo Koan, I think that often that is translated broadly translated as actualize the fundamental point. And what that means to me is, so giving is the fundamental point. But if it's really to be alive, we have to actualize it. We have to do it. It's not enough for us to receive. We have to continue this cycle of giving and pass the gifts on. And I think we can offer our gifts, our energies, our guidance in many ways. For a chaplain, often the giving is simply accompaniment, simply coming alongside and being present with someone. And the understanding there is that our harmonization or the work of peace is just connection. So as I said before, on the simplest level, material things are given. And then on another level, the teaching is shared. And on the highest level, it's just connection. The endless society of beings, the vast assembly of bodhisattvas. There's a wonderful book that's called The Gift by Lewis Hyde. Maybe some of you know of it. Do any of you know of that book? There's one person in the middle. Anyway, I recommend it strongly. And there's a passage in this book where Hyde describes a dinner that he had in a restaurant in the south of France. He says the patrons sit at a long communal table, and each finds before him a modest bottle of wine. Before the meal begins, one person will pour his wine not into his own glass, but into his neighbor's. And the neighbor will return the gesture, filling the first person's empty glass. In an economic sense, nothing has happened. No one has any more wine than they would if they had poured themselves their own glass. But society has appeared where there was none before. In that reciprocal activity, we connect with each other instead of simply taking care of our own needs. And that's giving. So the gift, it's important to recognize that the gift is only a gift so long as it remains in circulation. So a monk or nun in Southeast Asia carries their empty bowl from house to house. Or, like some of us have experienced, and a whole bunch of you are going to experience pretty soon during Rohatsu Sesshin, you sit in the zendo with your oryoki bowls arrayed before you, and people come, and your brothers and sisters come and bring you the food. You're not served by, a hired waiter or waitress. We serve each other. We cook for each other. We eat with each other. This is a collective activity that keeps the gift in circulation. So the bowls, these eating bowls, are emptiness. Yet in this world, food is offered so that one may live. Food is form. Emptiness and form embrace each other. And having eaten, the practitioner, this includes you, transforms the food into practice and action, which again is offered when we raise bodhicitta. We offer that to nourish all beings. So this giving is not an abstraction. It occurs, in the world itself. A little later in the fascicle, Dogen says, to provide a boat or to build a bridge is offering as the practice of dana paramita. When we carefully learn the meaning of giving, both receiving our body and giving up our body are offering. That's really strong, giving up our body. We give it up as sacrifice, whether we give it up as just the end of our allotted time, and it returns to the elements. But this is offering. Earning a livelihood, managing our business, this is in Dogen, earning our livelihood or managing our business are from the outset nothing other than giving. Entrusting flowers to the wind and entrusting birds to the season may also be the meritorious activity of giving. Once again, entrusting flowers to the wind and entrusting birds to the season, which seemed, I mean, as Dogen was writing, that was kind of like, well, yeah, that's just naturally the way the world works. And now we have to give that a second thought. Because if we pursue the way we are living on this planet, it's not something that we can take for granted. So in all of our worldly needs and actions, in all of our worldly actions, we should consider what others need and what we can give without getting caught in our own self-centeredness. This is always really a difficult practice. And at the conclusion of this section, Dogen says, this is like one of my favorite sentences in Dogen. He says, the mind of a living being is difficult to change. And I can hear Homer Simpson saying, "Do." Yes, a mind of a sentient being is difficult to change. We are caught in our patterns, our self-centered patterns of thought. It's really hard to let go of that entirely. And yet it's important to recognize the spaces in which we just do that very, very naturally. So I'm going to just skip ahead a little and talk about the fourth method, just briefly. And the fourth method, this cooperation or identity action, means that bodhisattvas can appear in any guise. They can appear as a street person. They can appear as a clown, as a soldier, as a bank teller, as the counter person at a fast food restaurant. All of this. And I think that what I like about identity action as a way of describing this, that there's the implication that we have the opportunity continuously to reinvent ourselves. And we reinvent ourselves with the intention of helping other beings awaken. So I say to myself, and I've talked about this before, the instruction, the Zazen instruction that you get at Upaya encourages you to, at the start of each period, to raise bodhicitta, to raise the enlightening mind. And I really take that to heart. So at the beginning of every period of Zazen, I say lightly to myself, silently, may I be awake that others may awaken. May I be awake that others may awaken. And I think that's what I do at the beginning of a period of Zazen. In the world, the manifestation of that is, may I take the appropriate form to meet or to accompany a sentient being. Actually, the Pali word that's translated as cooperation is samanatata. And I think that it has the root of the word same in it. And it's the sameness, it's impartiality. It's sharing common aims, directions. So Dogen writes, he writes, cooperation means not to be different, neither different from self nor from others. That's instructed. How can we be different from ourselves? Or how can we not be different from ourselves? If we look really closely, sometimes we can see the fractal lines or divisions within ourselves. Not just our division from others, but our own divided self. So, not to be different, neither different from self nor from others. For example, in the human world, the Tathagata identifies with human beings. Because he identifies with human world, we know that he must be the same in other worlds. In other words, in whatever world he's in, he takes the appropriate form. When we realize cooperation, self and others are one suchness. And I just want to read you one more passage and then maybe have a couple minutes for Q&A. This passage has a political dimension that's very unusual in Dogen. He closes this presentation on cooperation with kind of a meditation on the relations between a nation's people and their ruler. Because mountains do not refuse to be mountains, they can be mountains and reach great heights. Because wise rulers do not weary of their people, they attract many people. A wise ruler may mean an emperor. Emperors do not weary of their people. This does not mean that they fail to offer rewards and punishments, but that they never tire of people. They don't turn their backs on people. Because wise rulers are clear, they never turn away from their people. Although people always desire to form a nation and to have a wise ruler, few of them understand why a wise ruler is wise. They are simply glad to be embraced by the wise ruler. They don't realize that they themselves are embracing a wise ruler. In other words, they don't realize that it is our act of identification that creates the wise ruler. It's also our act of identification that creates the stupid ruler. Now, we get on the basis of our own virtue and clarity, we get the leaders that we wish for. And this is a kind of admonitory comment that I would add. So the principle of identity action or cooperation exists both in the wise ruler and the ignorant people. So I've been talking a while. I think we have a couple minutes, but I encourage you to read the whole fascicle of Dogen's and think it through for yourself. So I don't know if how you facilitate this. Maybe people raise their digital hands. I think we have to leave though at 6:30, I believe. So Noah, if you want to.
Yep. Thank you, Sensei Alan, for that wonderful talk and diving into how our practice and social engagement come together. And so, yeah, if anyone in the chaplaincy room has a question, anyone in the Zoom room who is a chaplain, and if anyone on YouTube wants to text a question, I can also relay that. But yes, we have 3 minutes. So please do raise your digital hand if you're a chaplain.
Shikan.
Go ahead, Shikan.
I'm really intrigued by the relationship between the notion of even the notion identity action
Yeah.
is interesting, and how that relates to cooperation. So
Yeah.
if you go deeper into that, I would love it.
Easily.
Either or both.
Yeah. What it means is acting in identity with others. And acting in identity with yourself. I think that clarifies it, but it's why, unless you have that clarification, it appears a little obscure. But does that help? Can't hear you.
Go ahead. Oh, okay. Go ahead.
That does help, because I think what that gets to is that if there's really no self and others, then what you're saying about identity gets really juicy.
Yeah, but let's be careful. There both is and isn't a self and other. Let's not go immediately to the absolute that there's no self and others. There is, and that is the dynamic tension that we live with, which is very generative. We have time for one more, maybe, Linda?
Thank you. Could you just clarify quickly the name of the fascicle again?
Yeah, in Japanese, it's Bodhisatta, Bodaisatta, new word, Shishobo, Shishobo. And as I said, it's translated in various ways. Yeah.
Thank you. That will be helpful to track it down to read.
Yeah, check it out. There are translations online you can find. Anything else in the last 30 seconds? Anyone? Well, I look forward to, I think I'll be working with cohort 16 tomorrow with Rabbi Johanna Katz, and looking forward to that. And I'm also looking forward, I'm hoping that maybe we'll be more open in March, and I'll be able to physically join you or some of you for part of that. I don't know what the plan is yet, but I may be misspeaking, but I haven't been there for more than 4 years, and I see just the beautiful Zendo, and I know there's a new building I'd really like to see, and I love it. I love it down there. So thanks to you all.
Thank you so much, Sensei Alan. And yes, we look forward to having you back as soon as possible. Bring your guitar.
We love you, Alan.
Thank you.
So just a quick word for everyone online. Please join us for this weekend's retreat on Bodhisattva, the Bodhisattva's activism. So we can dive more deeply into this subject of how does our practice and meet with the suffering of the world. We'll be joined with Roshi Joan, Dekila Chungyalpa, and John Dunn for a fantastic discussion over Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So join online, and I think we're probably full in person, but let us know if you want to join in person. And for those of you here in the Zendo, join us for dinner. We'll end with the 4 great Bodhisattva vows.